Peace, peace, peace. It's your brother Pt.1 Sweenell doing a Friday freestyle. Happy Friday to y'all family. First, I rise giving praises to Allah, and I give honors to all true and divine prophets, and most importantly, Drew Ali. Um, Happy holiday, family. And as you can see by the title of the show, we are talking about the 2020 census. And this is a very interesting topic for most Moors. Um, a lot of different Moors have a lot of different views on this topic, and so we're just going to jump right into it. And the reason we're going to jump into it is earlier, I think last week, or maybe even earlier in this week, the Census Bureau dropped some information in terms of how identification was going to be done for people of African descent on the 2020 census. And on the 2020 census in general, they're moving towards a concept of original identity or place of origin in terms of your identity. We can all see on Federal Directive 15 that origin is on there, but they specifically just deal with the concept of race. You know what I'm saying? And they say the race has an origin. But now they're going to be linking origin a little bit deeper into it. For instance, we all know as Moors that we have the ability to classify ourselves as white persons based upon the fact that Morocco is in North Africa. And historically, the North Africans have consistently been able to, since 1790, since the first census, been able to classify themselves as free white persons. As we know, free white persons has nothing to do with skin color, and it's a legal classification. And we can see this even in modern times with the brother named Mustafa Hefni, who's of Egyptian descent, but for all intents and purposes, he looks like a regular African American. You know what I'm saying? But he's from Egypt, right? And when he came to America, he became very linked with the African Americans here, and he wanted to classify himself as black. He didn't want to be classified as white. So for decades, he's been trying to get classified as white amongst with the government here, and they told him no, we can't classify you, or he tried to be classified as black. Excuse me, and he said they told him we can't classify you as black because our naturalization law stipulates that where you come from, you are white. White has nothing to do with skin tone. And so he eventually, you know what I'm saying, took people, or took the government to court, et cetera. And maybe as a direct response, I don't know, I'm not certain. But definitely what has happened is the fact that now on the census, you can stipulate that you are of African descent and that you are black, and be from any part of the continent for the first time since in the history of this country, that you can be from, for instance, like from North Africa and be black. That has never happened before in our naturalization law, and also within our census. You can classify yourself as a black, but you could never classify yourself as being North African and black. It didn't work out that way. So if you were to come into the country, for instance, and say that you're Moroccan, right? Like, okay, you're white. Now, for the first time ever, you can stipulate that you can be Moroccan and black, or Libyan and black, or Egyptian and black and whatnot, or anywhere from North Africa and black. Very interesting, very, very interesting times. Very interesting times. We've never seen anything like this before. And a lot of different people have a lot of different remedies for how they deal with the census. Or when I say remedies, there's not even an issue with the census, right? But people treat the census like there is an issue. And so what I want to do is list out a few solutions that people use in trying to deal with the census, and walk them through to their logical end and see if they're viable. And also compare and contrast to what the Prophet did, or what he talked about, and what's in our literature. So first and foremost, I'll let everyone know what I do. On all government literature and paperwork when it comes to identification, I definitely put down that I'm a white person. And On the census, I will definitely be putting down I'm a white person. Most certainly. Uh, I have no hang up whatsoever on the concept of white because I understand it historically comes from Asiatic people. It's historically part of a caste system that we created that you can find from India all the way to West Africa. You know what I'm saying? You can even find it in parts of East Asia, but it's a caste system that we created, yeah. And white has nothing to do with skin tone, and black has nothing to do with skin tone in that caste system. Like we see that in the prophet's literature that black according to science means death, but he says that in the literature that white means purity, purity means God, and God means rule of the land. And then he stipulates that we are a clean and pure nation. So there's no way that anybody should have an issue with the concept of whiteness. None whatsoever. This is not a construct that Europeans created or that Christians created or anyone else created other than Asiatics. It may have been adopted by other people, but it was created by us. And to this day, you can find people in North Africa and West Africa who are dark-skinned African people who are the ruling classes of a society that will refer to themselves as white. As a matter of fact, there was a story of a Moor who was released back to Africa under the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. Famous story, right? The Prince Amongst Slaves. Ibrahim Ibn Sari, I believe his name is, right? From Fouta Djallon in Africa, right? West Africa. And I believe that's Guinea or Gambia, one of the two, something like that, right? It's in the Gambia, right? So when his father came to power, right? Because this man was of royalty, right? When his father came to power, he was a Fullah man, right? It's spoken of that when he came to power, there was a ceremony to where he was given the white turban of office. The white turban of office. So even amongst our Moorish Muslim kindred in West Africa, who were whose descendants directly got dealt with by the Moors, right? We see amongst them that they had a concept of white having denoting ruler of the land with the white turban of office. So I say that to get into this, right? A lot of Moors don't like identifying as white. They want to identify as something else because they have a personal hang-up on that concept. For instance, I've seen people put Asian instead of white because they figure Asian is close to Asiatic. And I can't knock that. That seems to make logical sense. I'm not trying to say it doesn't. However, it's not quite the same thing as a free white person. And I've also seen people say you're supposed to write in Moorish American. Even going so far as to say that if enough people do it, the government will have no choice but to recognize it as something legitimate. The problem with that being is that off the top you're making the recognition that it's not something legitimate to begin with. Not that Moorish American isn't a legitimate nationality. However, it's not something that the government recognizes in terms of being a top-tier citizen. So again, via the Constitution and via the naturalization laws of this country, there's tiers of citizenship. Tiers of citizenship. And the top tier of citizenship is free white person. And this was broken down in the Naturalization Act of 1790, where it broke down the difference between a naturalized citizen and a natural-born citizen, or a native-born citizen, right? For instance, the difference between the two, they're both citizens, they both have the right to vote, etc. But the difference between the two was that one, the native or natural-born citizen had the ability to rise all the way to the highest office of the land, and it has the ability to become the president, right? while the naturalized citizen only has the ability to become as high as the presidential cabinet by appointment to any office in the land other than the presidency. For instance, Arnold Schwarzenegger could run for governor of California, become the governor of California. He could be he could be a secretary of state of some sort, right? But he could not be the president, not unless there was an amendment to the Constitution, because the Constitution stipulates that the president has to be a natural-born citizen, i.e., a free white person, right? A lot of people like to say that Barack Obama was able to become president because he had a nationality as a Kenyan American. No, he was able to become president because his mother was a natural-born citizen, i.e., he was a natural-born citizen, i.e., he was a free white person. Top-tier citizen, had the ability to actually be eligible for president to begin with. His father had no eligibility for president. His eligibility came through his mother. And so what people who follow that last prescription need to understand is that at the outset of the country, citizenship was only legally allowed to be extended to people who were free white persons. They literally had to change the Constitution. They had to put the I believe the 14th or the 15th and or both amendments in to actually be able to allow themselves to extend naturalization to people who were not free white persons. Those amendments are passed before the Naturalization Act of 1870, which is where you see the codification of a black person in naturalization law. And again, whereas in the Naturalization Act of 1790 only pertains to free white persons, the Naturalization Act of 1870 only pertains to black persons. Only pertains to black persons, and it's written very, very peculiar in the sense that it pertains to the slaves of African descent, right, and people of African nativity. And again, now what it does not do is it does not say that these people have the same rights as a white person. It does not say that. In fact, it doesn't even say that they have the same rights as a naturalized citizen, right? Because a naturalized citizen has the ability to be appointed to any office in the land. However, it's assumed such because it's a naturalization process, right? They're becoming naturalized citizens, right? But however, we got to get real specific. So in 1790, it says when you naturalize, your children become free white persons. That's not said here in the Naturalization Act of 1870. What it stipulates is, bottom line is, once you become a black person, you stay a black person. You can't just black people, etc. There is no elevation of status like there is in 1790 for the naturalized citizen. It is literally a second class a tier of citizenship, codified in naturalization law. Codified in that law. And so what people who follow the prescription of writing in Moorish American need to understand is that you would need to have a constitutional amendment passed and then a naturalization act passed and or some sort of citizenship legislation passed that would allow for that would allow for the government to actually recognize that Moorish American counted as a top tier citizen. Until something like that happens, until legislation like that passes, you can't say that Moorish American or writing it in is going to count you as a citizen. Don't think that just proclaiming your nationality out loud via the Moorish American Muslims in the temple is going to make you a citizen. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Understand what it is. The Prophet said his nationality is Moorish American. Then he said that our nationality is Moorish American. Why is it Moorish American? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. Very simple, very plain, and calls us true American citizens. and calls upon all true American citizens. What's the true American citizen? That's the top tier citizen. That's the white meaning purity, purity meaning God, and God meaning ruler of the land, right? And us being a clean and pure nation. Yeah. So if we're descendants of Moroccans and born in America, that means that we're retroactively proclaiming a natural-born citizenship. We're not naturalizing it. We're not nationalizing. Nationalizing means that you're becoming the property of the nation, right? And naturalizing is again, that's something that foreigners have to do. The prophet didn't say that we're foreigners. He said that we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America. So that means that we are natural-born citizens all day, every day. And when you look at Federal Directive 15, it defines white persons as being anybody who has origins in any of the original people of North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, right? Any of the original peoples. And we're seeing right now that the oldest Homo sapien just got pulled out of Morocco. Bottom line, there's nobody. The original people, period. There's nobody. Like, so off the top, we know that North Africa and the Middle East and all that type, that's Canaan right there. They map out Canaan right there. So off the top, there's nobody who doesn't come from that. There's nobody who doesn't classify as that. It's a universal concept for anybody willing to identify as such. For anybody willing to claim their forefathers and foremothers like that, yeah? Very simple concept. Very simple concept. So if we're already natural-born citizens, right, and we can claim being African, right, and we can claim being free white persons all at the same time, and that makes us eligible for being the top tier of everything. What's the issue? Because here's what people have to understand. If we claim anything else on that paperwork, on that census paperwork, if we claim anything else, the government will put us in an other pile, right? And other is not the top tier of citizenship. Others in that is in that colored blended phase, right? And the prophet said man cannot be Negro, black, or colored, right? Colored means anything that's painted, stained, varnished, or dyed, right? And color of law is when you allow somebody to paint you, right? So that's precisely what putting something in, or putting something other than the free white person thing, or putting in other than white is. You're going to let someone paint you. Moorish American is not recognized as its own standalone thing. If you think so, call up the Census Bureau. They'll tell you otherwise. Ask them. If I write in Moorish American on the census, will it still count as being a white person? Promise you're not going to get yes. At best, you're going to get an I don't know. At best, you're going to get an I don't know. At the very best, you're going to get an I don't know. And here's the real truth of the matter, right? We're looking at Barack Obama having just been president, right? And everybody's saying one of the greatest things about him becoming president is the fact that people have the ability, or our children have the ability, to see themselves as being presidents. That they too can one day grow up and be presidents. You and I both know that someone who identifies as black, right, that they can be everything but the president. Via how the laws, like I just said, via how the law is broken down, they can be everything but the president and the vice president, I believe. I got to double check that one. But they cannot hold the highest executive office in the land. So are you going to sit there and tell our children that you want them to be able to grow up and be president, but at the same point in time voluntarily identify as something that won't allow them to become president if they so choose? If they so choose. Again, we got to be realistic, people. Look at the situation in country we live in. We got to stop fronting like they're treating African descent people like like they want to do us dirty in a very deep way. Look at what happened. So so we got freed as slaves, right? And then we became refugees. We became refugees, right? It's the bureau. It's called the Bureau of Freedmen, the Freedmen's Bureau of Land and Refugees, right? We're refugees, yeah. We were refugees, stateless people, and we chose not to proclaim nationality as Moorish Americans, right? And it's not that people didn't know who the Moors were. Being Moorish was very prominent through that time period and before, in the public sphere, right? People knew what time it was. People knew exactly what time it was. So we didn't proclaim nationality as Moorish Americans because we were eligible to do so. No new laws needed to be passed for us to become citizens of this country, just like the Prophet said. At any point in time after slavery, we could have instantaneously all been citizens, right? But we did not proclaim that nationality. We decided to stay black people, right? So having decided to stay black people, whoever that benefited, right, they had no issue rocking with that, right? Because you already know what it was. There was people who definitely had no problem with us staying black people, right? People who definitely had no problem with that. Like, cool, I got you. We'll rock with that. And so what do? They worked. We'll give you civil rights, civil rights, civil rights. The Prophet says we don't have civil rights. Prophet says we don't do civil rights. We got constitutional rights, right? Divine rights as citizens, yeah? Divine rights as citizens, right? So what are the cats working to give us civil rights to? Again, they're passing constitutional amendments, yeah? Now, the Prophet already broke down the fact that the 14th and 15th Amendment was not passed for our salvation, right? That had to do with getting the South back into union with the North, right? But again, what that also has to do with is naturalization law. Again, they were not able to legally extend naturalization to people who were black persons. Go look it up. They were not able to extend naturalization to people who were black persons without amending the Constitution and passing new naturalization laws. And when they did, they specifically focused only on black persons in that act. Again, 1790 solely dealt with white persons. 1870 solely dealt with black persons. Law governs all events. Law governs all events on this, yeah? So we become, again, understand African descent people in this country, right? People who are labeled Negro, Black, Colored, African American, all that, right? They are the largest refugee population in the world. They don't recognize that they're a refugee population because they've been given civil rights up into the status of being second-class citizens. And peep game, even when they were extended naturalization, even when our people were extended naturalization through 1870 and becoming second-class citizens, there was no mass naturalization. Understand that. We still didn't even pick that up. So they just kept throwing civil rights at us and civil rights at us and civil rights at us, right? And the people who did not want us to be top-tier citizens had no issue continuing to extend these civil rights to us. To the point to where we're comfortable, a lot of our people are comfortable thinking that they are full citizens, right? And so they're going to have no issue putting black on the census. Just like Mustafa Hefni is going to proudly put black on the census for the first time. Get this thing, I'm an Egyptian black Nubian, right? But what are we going to do? Are we going to sell ourselves short and write in something that's not going to make us eligible to be top-tier citizens? Are we going to sell ourselves short and misidentify as Asian because we want to be close to Asiatic? Are we going to recognize that doing such is not going to classify us as top-tier citizens? We got to be real honest, fam. We got to be real honest because it's not just us who's going to pay for what we do on this census, right? We're teaching our children how to interact with this government, with our constitutional government, right? We gotta teach them the right, proper constitutional way to deal with it, right? So first and foremost, put down Black's Law Dictionary. Black's Law Dictionary has nothing to do, I repeat, nothing to do with constitutional law. Pick up Bovier's Law Dictionary. Bovier's Law Dictionary was specifically modified to deal with constitutional law. Specifically modified. And it was in the public libraries during the time of the Prophet. Again, I repeat, it was in the public libraries during the time of the Prophet. Something everyone had access to. Again, Bovier's Law Dictionary was specifically modified for the Constitution. It was the first American constitutional law dictionary. Again, and it's still applicable in the Supreme Court to this day. Black's Law Dictionary is fine for a bunch of law applications, a lot of them. But again, it has nothing. It's not a constitutional law application. That's not what it was made for. It was pretty much made for everything that wasn't constitutional law. Again, Bovier's Law Dictionary, Bouviers. Bovier's Law Dictionary. What we do is going to be extremely important, family. Extremely important going forward. So again, I urge everybody, don't hesitate to put down white. Don't hesitate to classify yourself as purity, because we already know purity makes the way for love, right? We know that black, according to science, means death. We know that man cannot be Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian, or African American, because African American is two continents, yeah? It's not a nationality. And we know that white means purity, purity means God, and God means ruler of the land, and that we are a clean and pure nation descended from the inhabitants of Africa. We've been free white persons since 1790 on when it comes to the census, to this day, and it's not going to change. And it still hasn't changed. So don't fall for the rope-a-dope. Don't mark yourself down as black, and don't mark yourself down as something that will make you other. And with that, I say peace and love, family. Happy Holy Day.
You got a friend in me.
You've got a friend in me.
Celebrate friendship and beyond during the first ever Pixar Fest with the all-new Pixar-themed fireworks spectacular and your favorite park parades. Celebrate from April 13th through September 3rd, only at Disneyland Resort. Visit Disneyland.com for details.
There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you.
You got a friend in me.
Entertainment subject to change without notice.
You got a friend in me.
You've got a friend in me.
Celebrate friendship and beyond during the first ever Pixar Fest with the all-new Pixar-themed fireworks spectacular and your favorite park parades. Celebrate from April 13th through September 3rd, only at Disneyland Resort. Visit Disneyland.com for details.
There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you.
You got a friend in me.
Entertainment subject to change without notice.